Hey everyone, it's Yvonne Inglesos here from the Eating Disorder Recovery Hub. Welcome. Don't forget to subscribe to our page so that you can actually see when I'm going live and join in the conversation. I'd love for you to ask questions as I do this, and today's topic is actually one of the big challenges that our community has talked about having, they have an eating disorder, which is outside stressors. So I asked the question this week, what is your biggest challenge? And there was a few people that actually said outside stressors are my biggest challenge at the moment. So how do we deal with this when we have an eating disorder? Well, this is what I'm going to say. I don't know that you can ever control what's going on around you to the extent that you might like, right? So stuff is always going to be happening around you, and you are going to have a difficult time if your internal world is not so strong. And that's ultimately when you have an eating disorder, that you don't feel capable of speaking up, that you feel potentially that there is no point in speaking up. So what my suggestion is, when there are outside stresses, really evaluate whether, for example, there is situations that you can actually change, right? So if there's outside stresses that really are not healthy for you and are actually causing you a hell of a lot of distress and you're in danger, right? You're in a situation that is not good for you. I mean, in that situation, you really have to get the right support to get out of there, right? There is no compromise on that. But if we're talking about work, we're talking about uni, we're talking about family, we're talking about, I don't know. I mean, if you guys want to, please comment below and I will address each of those particular situations individually. And I know when you have an eating disorder, things impact you way more because you actually are way more sensitive at that point, right? And I don't know if you've heard my friend Dr. Anita Johnson, but she talks about women, particularly with eating disorders, being, thin skin, the ones who are intuitive, that can pick things up. And so you may feel more sensitive, and you are actually more sensitive because you don't tend to have the best boundaries. So whether your boundaries are being compromised, physically, emotionally, just to really, you don't have the capacity when you have an eating disorder to have good boundaries. So you will feel extremely stressed. Say you're going through exams, right? And I know a lot of people in the community study, or their moms or their dads, whoever you are, that there's each role we play has its own stresses. So say if you are studying for exams and you feel super stressed, and at that point the eating disorder behaviors increase, they intensify. They do that a lot of the time because the characteristics we have when we have an eating disorder are intense. I mean, one of them is perfectionism. So let's be real. When you struggle with perfectionism, when perfectionism is part of what you do, which everyone with an eating disorder usually has, you will not be able to feel less stressed when you have exams, right? The best thing to be doing is actually working on that perfectionism throughout every single day of your life, so that you are less critical of yourself, that you actually see that things aren't black and white, it's not all or nothing, it's not perfect, there's not one way to do something. And that the more you can notice the crappy voice in your head and actually be nicer to yourself, then those outside stresses lose their power, okay? And that's the thing, is we need to help each one of you to work out how to feel stronger inside, right? Not just feel stronger inside, but to develop the skills so that when there's external stresses, that you are not going to crumble. Now, when there's external stresses, you will bet your bottom dollar that the eating disorder behaviors are going to spike, right? Because at the moment, the eating disorder is your life raft. It is the thing that's helping you get through life. So you are going to then feel distressed about the eating disorder behaviors, and then it feels like that's the issue. and that you need to work on the external stresses. What I'm going to propose to you guys is that you actually need to, on a day-to-day basis, even when there's not those stresses, particularly when there's not those stresses, to notice that you can work on a day-to-day basis on the skills you need, right, to actually develop an inner strength. Okay? Now, this isn't easy. So don't think I'm saying, look, you just need to toughen up, because I don't think that at all, right? I actually think you have to really notice the voice in your head that is super critical. And I do this with my clients all the time. I notice when they're really hard on themselves and they think they should be able to just about do everything, no matter what the hell's going on around them. And more often than not, just like I did, I would pile a lot of things onto my schedule. So if I can tell you this, I worked full-time, I studied full-time, and I also was part of a couple of community groups, so I didn't have a spare second to myself. Now, get this, that is part of the eating disorder, and you might feel like I'm super stressed because I've got to study, I've got so many exams, I've got to work full-time. Well, the thing is, when you have an eating disorder, you don't actually know how to say no to anything. That's usually the case. And you don't know how to actually look after yourself in a healthy way. So I know I was really, really tough on myself. When I studied and when I was working full time, I wanted to be the best employee, and I also wanted to get the best marks. So I hated anything that was less than, that top 10 percentile, getting HDs. I hated it because I thought that was a measure of me, of who I am. But you have to get that those external stresses have a lot to do with how we approach everything. When you have an eating disorder, when you are struggling with this eating disorder, how you cope with everything is going to be really stressful, right? Because you'll go to the eating disorder behaviors because you can't deal with, for example, conflict. You cannot tell, for example, your boss that you're concerned about something happening at work, or that you need time off for exams. You feel like you need to cram everything in, and so what you do is you adapt yourself to the point where you feel super stressed. You don't want to ask for help. You don't want to ask for any leniency because you see it as weakness. So there's lots of factors in this about how someone with an eating disorder actually copes with things going on around life, not necessarily that external stresses are really bad. Because I always tell everyone, do not expect that when you are recovered that life is rosy. The difference is that I've got the fucking skills now. That's it. I've got the skills to get through my life without needing the eating disorder behaviors to actually survive. I don't need them to avoid situations. I don't need them to, for example, stay up all night, not get some rest, because I value self-care. Right? The things that you value when you are recovered are different to when you have an eating disorder. When you have an eating disorder, you don't want to cause any trouble for anyone. You don't want to be seen to be too needy. You don't want to be seen to be painful. So there's all these things you're trying to avoid, and the reality is that outside stresses become more distressing for someone with an eating disorder because you haven't got the internal structure to deal with them. So I want you to comment below what exactly are the external stresses that you're struggling with. It could be family. Now, I know lots of clients that have come to me, and this is a major one. Mothers who, for example, have 2-3 children and they do not want to ask for any help. They want help, they want treatment, but they don't want to ask for help to get that treatment. And what I mean by that is they don't want to ask their partner, their parents, their friends, or anyone to assist them because they feel like it's imposing on other people, right? So it's about starting to realize that you are worth way more than the eating disorder allows you to believe right now, right? And when you have external stresses, you don't have that belief that you deserve more, okay? You just don't have it. So what we want you to do is to realize that external stresses feel more intense when you have the eating disorder, but what we're going to do is continue to bring you videos that help you to understand when you have skills like being assertive, so being able to say no, not people pleasing, right? So not doing stuff that you don't want to do, asking for help, having self-compassion, all of these skills mean that external stressors, they lose their power, guys. They lose their power because you are stronger inside to deal with them, okay? So I'm going to leave it there for now. Please comment below when you watch this and I can respond to any questions you have about this, because I know it's a major thing for our community. External stressors, how do you deal with them? The eating disorder at the moment, but let's help you find other ways. Okay, bye.